We know we're good, and we are recording. This is awesome. So welcome, and everybody that's watching over on Cricket, or everybody that is watching this later on YouTube or so. Welcome. Just to recap and tell you what this is about. This is the Palestra online monthly session where I do one of my keynotes. Let me just admit somebody here, where I do one of my keynotes and we can have a little bit of a discussion about it. And it's just sharing knowledge and ideas and kind of also just to see who else is in the community. So we have got a couple of new members sitting with us for the first time. I think Devan, Yaku, Shane is there. Rick is an old hat from the beginning, part of the community. And you're the one who looks like Gandalf, if you haven't met Gandalf over there in the middle. Rick is in Michigan. Last time we had people in from Sri Lanka and all over the place, so it's really rad. I see a couple more people coming in, so I'm just like letting them in as we go. And so today's session, so if you're visiting, I know a couple of people have gotten tickets from friends that are here. So Palestra is a community of practice where we do practices together, practices that are designed to make us into better human beings, and so that we can start doing awesome work and work that matters. And as any kind of practice goes, it's better to do it in community. It's better to know that you're trying to become better when you're with a group of people. So that's kind of the general idea behind Palestra and behind this community and also behind the session. And it's just plain fun. So we're just having fun as well and sending around crazy info and weird documentaries and weird articles and looking at strange, beautiful and awesome things. So that's also kind of like the idea, just having fun. So today's session is about storytelling. Let me just share my screen here and we can get going. So today's session is about storytelling. And it's something that I am really, really passionate about. I was for about, I think, the last 10 to 15 years. So if you don't know, I am from a theological background as well, or I've studied theology, and narrative theology is one of the things that I am very passionate about. Understanding theology in terms of story. And story is such a powerful thing. This is a powerful way to communicate that I put this talk together a couple of years ago to help people use storytelling in their business and use it in their life. And it has like so many applications. It's really just very, 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 very powerful. So let me begin. On your screen, and we're hoping this works, you'll see a dot and two triangles, right? So I want you to let me know. You can let me know in the. I wonder if I can see the chat on here. What you think is happening on the screen right now. Right? So what you should have seen, I hope you saw it, is the triangles and the circle is moving around the screen. Did you see that? Yeah? Can I get a thumbs up or something? Yeah. So what did your mind tell you was happening on the screen? So normally, when my daughter saw this, so he's moving. There's my daughter Nua. So when she saw this for the first time, she went, "Oh, the two are running away from the one that's different." I was like, "Oh, okay. There's a serious projection going on there." But normally, this is like that scenario is a famous scenario that was designed by a couple of psychologists in the middle of the previous century, whenever somebody sees, so this is a very, very simplified version of it, but whenever somebody sees that, it's actually called the Haider-Simmel simulation, done in the 1940s by psychologists Fritz Haider and Marian Simmel. And people are very, very quick to see a narrative. So you see something like the circle is chasing the triangles, or the triangles are running away from the circle, or they are running on a track. So the way that we interpret images like this is we begin to see a story, because our brains are hardwired to use narrative to create meaning in the midst of chaos. And that's like basically the thrust of this whole presentation. Is like story is a meaning making mechanism. That's how it works, and that's why it's so powerful, which is why my daughter uses it naturally. So let me tell you a story. This is a story that I often tell in like very many of my presentations. But the story goes like this. There was a cathedral being built in a small town in Europe. And one day, one of the monks was walking around the cathedral, and there were three builders busy working on the cathedral. And the monk asked the first builder, "What are you busy doing?" And he said, "Well, I'm putting one brick on top of another. Can't you see? Like, this is what I'm doing. I'm putting one brick on top of another." And the monk walks to the next builder, and he said to him, "What are you busy doing?" And he said, "I am busy providing for my family." And the monk walked a little bit further and spoke to the third builder and said to him, "And what are you busy doing?" And he said, "I am building a house for the divine." So it's the story that we tell ourselves about the work that we do that matters. The story is the thing that generates the meaning. And story is the way that we are bound together. Humankind, we've been telling stories from the beginning of time. This is one of the cave paintings in Lascaux in France, which is one of the earliest stories. And stories are the way that we, like I said, like we make meaning out of our lives. So we've been telling them forever and forever and ever. And story is the way that we organize human beings. Like, if you want people to do something, you better be telling them a story. Like, I often say that I can fill a whole room with chimpanzees, or a whole stadium with chimpanzees, but I can't get them to do anything. But I can fill a whole stadium with people, and I can get them to do something because I can tell them a story. Because story is almost the antidote against chaos. And us living in such chaotic times, telling a good story is becoming more and more important. So this Robert Coover quote really is really powerful. It says, "We need myths to get by. We need story. Otherwise, the tremendous randomness of experience overwhelms us." And that is the power of story. So at the moment in the world, or for the past, 50 odd years, the world is very, very, very noisy. So there's lots and lots of stuff going on. We live in this noisy, kind of saturated world. There's just more and more and more specs, more and more options, and more stuff that it actually just creates all of the stress. And what's been so frustrating for me in this whole lockdown period is seeing lots of speakers and people like me in the industry I'm in, just everybody's trying to shout louder, thinking that is the way they're going to grab attention, right? But we are pretty saturated with ads. At the moment, I mean, can you guess? This is like a kind of a well-known, semi-well-known fact, but can you guess how many ads we are exposed to in any given day? You got to type there in the chat. How many ads do you think we are exposed to in a day? Give me a guess. 100? 4,000? It's more. It's higher than 4,000. 2,000? Nelfree says 2,000. Nelfree is replying to me privately. 4,000, 2,000, a lot. So the general consensus is, if you count brands, Jared, 30,000. 30,000 maybe a little bit high. But so the general consensus at the moment is that it's about 10,000. So if you think, we're sitting right now, we're sitting in front of your phone or your desk or your computer or wherever, look around you and note how many brands you can see. Just how many logos of stuff can you see? Right? I can see logos on your clothes, which are also ads. So I'm being bombarded by ads from your clothing on that side. So, I've got Dell, I've got Zoom, I've got Q2, I've got Fastway, I've got Apple, just in my little field of vision, I can see about 10 ads, which is crazy. And that's annoying. And the problem with this is it doesn't really work, or it used to work. And it used to work that just by buying more ads or just by shouting a lot louder, it actually would actually would help you to grab people's attention. And it sort of reminds me of, if you've ever been to a major kind of touristy world city. This is in New York, right? So this is what we try to do. We just shout louder. It's like walking down by the Sacré-Cœur in Paris, and there's like 40 guys, and they're all selling the same freaking thing. If you've ever been there, or any kind of tourist place like that, all these guys are selling the same bottle of soda, or the same little curio, or whatever. And the only way that the one vendor can get more sales than the other vendor is by shouting louder. And that is not a very not a very effective way to market, not anymore, because people are annoyed by that. I found this little cartoon the other day, which I love. It says, "I don't understand. I bought Facebook ads and everything. Why doesn't it work?" So, as any kind of decent business person would tell you, about a third of any business's marketing budget is wasted. A third. That's like 30% of your money down the drain. So we waste masses and masses amounts of time and energy to tell the world what we do, so that the world can hear us amidst the noise. So attention is a very, very scarce resource. And you can no longer just buy it or just steal it. You have to earn it. And the brain is lazy. The one writer, Don Miller, we'll get to some of his work later again. He says, like, if you're showing your customers or the people that you want to reach something, and their brain has to start working to figure out what the hell it is that you're selling, it's like, imagine that they have to get onto a treadmill, right? And they have to stay on this treadmill until the time that they get what you are busy trying to tell them, right? So how long will people stay on the treadmill? So their brain is consuming all of this energy, and your brain doesn't like to do that. It wants to conserve energy. So you're making them work very hard. So the idea is to use story to make them not work so hard. So, like I said, I've been using story for about the last decade or so, looking at it, studying it, and I found it to be a really, really powerful thing. We even named one of our event spaces, I think a couple of you might remember, and you might have been there. We even named one of our spaces the Story Space back in like 2006 or 2009. So story, and here's like one of the key takeaways. And story is that it speaks to our souls. Like, it's part of our humanity. It's an ancient sense-making mechanism. And above all, story is a map our brains know. So here's the takeaway. Story is our primary meaning-making mechanism. So here's a bit of science, like the science behind the story. And then what it is, this is what we're going to be going through. The science, right? What story is, and then how to use it. So that's our little map for today. The science, what it is, and how to use it. So first, the science. Hello, yes, I would like to science, please. The science. Your brain is set up to understand story more than anything else. And there's been multiple studies done to show that your brain doesn't actually know the difference between hearing a story and living it. And also when you're seeing a story, when you're watching a movie, your brain doesn't really know the difference between you watching the movie and you actually living that same story. That's why they're so powerful. And we all have our favorite movies, right? So in both instances, hearing a story or living a story, similar regions in the brain are being activated. And story, like, here's the big kicker. Story releases oxytocin, right? So oxytocin, the one scientist calls it the most human of chemicals. It's the thing that makes me trust you. So when I tell you a story, your brain releases oxytocin, and then you start trusting me. So the reason I told the story, especially the story about my daughter, like in the beginning, that she said that the two triangles are running away from the one that's different. The reason I told that story is not just because I'm trying to be cute. It's because I wanted you to bond to me. So now I've given it away, and now you don't like me anymore because I kind of tricked you. But I wanted you to bond to me. So the moment I tell you a story, you bond to me, and that's what you want. And this is automatic. Like, you can't control that. So you're manipulating your brain. And also, when the story has like quite a bit of tension in it, it creates dopamine in your brain. Dopamine is about expecting something strange to happen. You know, when that violin music starts to play and the guy's walking down the dark corridor, like your brain starts releasing dopamine, going, what's going to happen? What's going to happen, right? So our brains also like, they like routine. So your brain will always go the path that it knows. And our brains know story really, really well. But our brains are very strange. They also like to be surprised. That's why we like music, actually, because music is rhythmic. So it's predictable when you listen to a song. But every now and again, the song changes all of a sudden. You go, ooh, that's nice. I like that. And it's like a little kick of dopamine. You go, oh, that's unexpected. So that's why we love story so much, because it's familiar, and it's familiar enough, but also it's chaotic and surprising enough. All right? So story, the second takeaway, story is a map our brains know. So here's a quote from Jennifer Aker, business marketing professor at Stanford. She says, research shows our brains are not hardwired to understand logic or retain facts for very long. Our brains are wired to understand and retain stories. A story is a journey that moves the listener, and when the listener goes on that journey, they feel different. The result is persuasion and action, and that's what every single marketer wants, is action. You want to create change. We'll get to that a little bit later. And another study showed that stories help you to remember facts. So you are 22 times more likely to remember a fact when it's been wrapped in a story. But for some reason, our sort of enlightened post-industrial world, we are obsessed with facts and specs. So let me show you this ad. It's from a while ago, but so it relies on specs, right? Telling you how much better the Nexus 4 is and how bad the iPhone 6 is, right? But the moment somebody sees like that, this doesn't have a story at all. And I really, really enjoy Apple's reply on ads like that, which just says, life is easier and on an iPhone, right? And so they are absolute masters at using stories to connect to people's minds and to connect to their brains and to help them, get them to take action. I mean, the first iPod ads were brilliant. The story that's contained in that, 1,000 songs in your pocket. Well, that's what you want. So immediately grabs your attention, immediately persuade you to go into action. I want to show you, I want to try and see if I can show you this ad. Let me just see if I am sharing sound. All right, I'm going to show you this. This is the ad, and I want you to count how many times you actually see the brand, right, while you see this ad. So I'm hoping it works. Give me a thumbs up when you can hear the sound.
If people say your dreams are crazy, if they laugh at what you think you can do, good. Stay that way. Because what non-believers fail to understand is that calling a dream crazy is not an insult. It's a compliment. Don't try to be the fastest runner in your school or the fastest in the world. Be the fastest ever. Don't picture yourself wearing OBJ's jersey. Picture OBJ wearing yours. Don't settle for homecoming queen or linebacker. Do both. Lose 120 pounds and become an Ironman after beating a brain tumor. Don't believe you have to be like anybody to be somebody. If you're born a refugee, don't let it stop you from playing soccer for the national team at age 16. Don't become the best basketball player on the planet. Be bigger than basketball. Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. When they talk about the greatest team in the history of the sport, make sure it's your team. If you have only one hand, don't just watch football. Play it at the highest level. And if you're a girl from Compton, don't just become a tennis player. Become the greatest athlete ever. Yeah, that's more like it. So don't ask if your dreams are crazy. Ask if they're crazy enough.
That's pretty good, right? I love that. I love that campaign because you actually don't. You notice the brand maybe in the beginning a couple of times, like 3 or 4 times, and you sort of forget about it halfway through because you get so wrapped up in the emotion that's actually going on in that ad, and it's about it, and it just uses story so brilliantly. So, and it's very emotive, and that's what story does.
Become the best.
Story uses your emotions. It speaks right to our hearts, to our to our emotional centers. We want people to act. And people only act on emotion. People rarely act on rationality. Like people aren't rational beings. I know I myself, I can speak like I have bought a car just for the smell, right? That is not a rational way to think about buying a car. We make emotional decisions all the time. And it's, in fact, like the only time that we make decisions is based on emotion. So, emotions, I mean, just the word emotion. An emotion moves you. Joy moves you towards. Anger moves you towards something. Sadness moves you away from something and towards something in this weird way. Fear moves you away from something. So if you want people to move, you have to engage their emotions. And the best way to do that is with, I know you guessed it, story, right? So Aristotle said that our brains are always searching for stories, or human beings are always searching for stories. And he said that it creates in our mind what he called proper pleasure. And just more than just a marketing exercise or something that you can use in business, stories is about being human. And I think like in today's kind of fast-paced, overly automated, digitally driven society, and now, you know, in the last 6 months more than ever, humanity is becoming like the new premium. The internet constantly rewards us with convenience and sort of instant gratification, and it's making the human touch increasingly more scarce and coveted. When you tell a story, you're tapping into somebody's humanity. And that's why it's important. The more, a friend of mine always says, like, the more high tech we are, the more high touch we need to become. Because humans, David Rushkoff said in his little TED talk, he says, humans are no longer valued for our creativity. We're only valued for our data. And stories short circuits that. I think creating stories, and this is this is why I'm so passionate about it. It's like creating stories means entering into the human story, valuing humans for their humanity, for their uniqueness, for their quirkiness, for their ambiguity, and that's what makes it so powerful. And any revolution, right? Any story, any revolution started with a story. People want to be led. People want to be taken somewhere. And if you want to lead people, you have to be telling them a story. This is so massively important. Like, it's the job of the leader to define reality. And not only that, but to then define a new reality, to say, this is where we are right now, but let me tell you a story. I want to show you where we can go to. And that's what a leader does. So, and that moves people. People get wrapped up in their emotion and they move towards that, right? So that's a little bit of science, how story engages our brains and our emotions. The next part, we're going to just pack out a little bit the nuts and bolts of story, but what it actually is, like how it actually fits together. So to do that, we begin with what it isn't. So here's what story isn't, right? A story is not fake. So for all our American friends, here's like a nice little American slide for you. A story is not fake. You can't fake something great again, right? It's something, it has to be true. People's like BS detectors are like at an all-time high. You can't be faking it. It doesn't work anymore. Like this, there was a little, that went really, really quickly. There you go. You can't be fake. A story is a promise. It's a promise of change. Now, here's something that I've learned from, I keep on calling him Saint Seth Godin. So Saint Seth says the very basic idea behind marketing, it's a promise. So it's a promise of change. And I asked this on my blog this morning as well, but the question here is, what do you want to change? What is the change that you are seeking to make? So that change can be, I want to change more people from using Android devices to using Apple devices. That's the change I want to make. I want to change more people from eating meat to having a plant-based diet. I want to change more people from this brand to that brand. I want to change this to that. I want people to move in this direction. I want people to join our cause and come and protest with us. I want people to become better people. I want people to join our community. That's the change. So that's really important. It's like, what is the change that you seek to make? Because that's what marketing is. And marketing is a promise. It says, I promise that I can help you make this change. That's it. And that's such an important thing. So, and we all have change that we seek to make in the world. But it's very important to ask that question. Here's something else that a story isn't. A story isn't just something that's long. Right? It's not just long and just like some gobbledygook saying. It's not just long. And story is not just an ad. It's more than that. So what drives a great story? A great story is driven by risk. So it's predictable, but if there's no risk, if you don't know how it's going to end, then you won't keep watching the movie, right? So one of the writers says that nobody watches a movie about a guy saving up his entire life to buy a Volvo. That's really, really boring. There's no risk in that. People watch stories when they have risk, because then the dopamine gets released and then you stay focused. So what will happen if the change doesn't happen? The change you seek to make. What will happen if they don't join you? What will happen if they don't buy your product? If they don't use it? And that's a big, important part. Remember this film? That was like the best freaking risk story ever. Speed. Speed in French. Speed. So Speed was great because it had so much risk. And that's where you keep watching it. So the lesson here, the takeaway is tension leads to attention. In order to motivate a desire to help others, a story must first sustain attention, which is a very scarce resource in the brain. If a story is able to create that tension, then it's very likely that the viewers or the listeners will come to share the emotions of the characters in it. That helps you to buy into the story. So creating tension is really, really important. So this is a story I love, which creates tension very, very quickly. So let me tell it to you. I hope I don't mess it up. I actually did this talk for a really big corporate for Remax the other day at their massive event, and I completely messed up this story. It was so terrible. Anyway, so I'm gonna do it really well now. So the story goes like this. A boy called his father, and he was in bed, and he called his father and said, Dad, please come to my bedroom. Please come to my bedroom. I think there's a monster under my bed. So the father came to his son, walked in and said, are you okay? He's like, Dad, I think there's a monster under my bed. Please check for me. And so the father went, oh, shame. He's like, oh, that's so terrible. That's so, oh, shame. So Africans say, oh, shame, when we feel like something's cute. I know it's weird, but anyway. So he said, oh, shame, that's so cute. Let me just humor him for a while. And he said, okay, it's fine. I'll check for monsters under your bed. And the father lifted up the little fringe thing that was hanging there over the bed, or the duvet or whatever, and lifted it up and looked underneath the bed. And underneath the bed, he saw his son shaking in fear, going, Dad, I think there's a monster on top of my bed. Dan. And that's dopamine. So that little tension, that little spike that you just felt, That's a little dopamine like releasing in your mind. So it's attention. So I immediately grabbed your attention, and that's kind of what you want. You want to know what's going to happen next. So great stories answer three questions. So whenever you are, so you can test this when if you're running a marketing campaign, or you're just telling a story to either your congregation, your people, your business, or your family, or whoever. You can test it with these three things. And the next time you watch a movie or you read a book, any good movie or good book will always answer these three questions at any time during the story. The first one is, what does the hero want? The second is, what is in their way? And the third, what will happen if they get it or don't get it? And that's where the tension comes in. Like, what will happen if they don't disarm the bomb on the bus? What will happen if he doesn't make it all the way back home? What will happen if they can't find the key? Or if they can't get the ring to Mordor or whatever. So those are the three most important questions in a story. So to tell a great story, you need more than tension. Tension is like the fuel that keeps it moving forward. But a story is more than that. The author of this book, which became a film, Cheryl Strayed, says a story has a couple of parts. It says she defines it like this: these three things. It has sorrow, journey, and then redemption. So that's sort of the same three things, just packaged differently. There's something that needs to happen, sorrow that needs to change into something else. I'm going to skip over that one. Donald Miller, who wrote fantastic books on story, the first one that he wrote was called A Million Miles in 1,000 Years, a couple of years ago. And then his recent one is Story Brand, which you might have heard of. So he talks about this as well in his work, and it's really, really great. He defines it like this. He says, story is a character who wants something and overcomes conflict to get it. Right? So that's a really simple way to think about it. There's Donald Miller's books if you want to grab them. They're very, very, very good and very helpful. So I want to give you a story, and what I want you to do, I'm going to open up the chat here, and then what I want you to do is then tell me if you can guess what story this is, right? We have a hero who starts in humble beginnings and answers the call of adventure, right? They leave home, get out of their comfort zone, and receive training from a wise old mentor. Last time we spoke about the wise old mentor. And then goes on a great journey. On this quest, they face a bad guy, almost lose everything, but eventually succeed and return home having changed for the better. What film, movie, or story is that? Rick, I think Rick knows the answer. It's every story. It's The Devil Wears Prada, right? It's also Star Wars. The Hero's Journey. Yeah, Tyrone, you're right. That's The Hero's Journey. It's also Star Wars. It's also every single Harry Potter movie. It's also Back to the Future. It's every single one of those. And as Tyrone said now, and as Rick said now, it's every story. It's like the archetypal story. The story that always works. So we find it in one way or another in every single movie and book. And if you don't find it, people would say that those movies, because many movies try, or many stories try not to use that because it's so common, and then they fail spectacularly. They're not wildly popular because people know this format so well, right? So at this point, we've said quite a few different things, and a story becomes quite confusing and crazy, and then we start to feel maybe a little bit like this guy, how does everything fit together? How do I use this in my marketing? How do I use it in my business? How do I use it in my life? What's the point of an ancient hero's journey story? Anyway, this is crazy. So here's what we're going to do now, how to use it. So what I've done is to create a very simplified version of story with just the basic elements of it. And I call it the map, right? So a little story map. It draws from the hero's journey, a little bit from Donald Miller's work, and from me obsessing with narrative structures. So I tend to use or reuse the same characters in all of my talks. So you might recognize a couple of characters from our previous sessions. So we have 5 different stages. This is our map. And there's one that you can use from now on when you sit in front of any client or you're busy designing like messaging or thinking how you're going to package that. And while using this map, you have to always ask those 3 questions that I mentioned earlier. Like what do they want? What is in their way? And what will happen if they don't get it? So let's begin. First, we have a hero. And then we have a desire, something that they want. And every story needs a villain. And then every story needs a sage, right? A wise old mentor. And every story needs a victory, one at the end. So here's our heroine for our story. So, and here's like one of the biggest takeaways from these talk. And like, I know Donald Miller also talks about it quite a bit, but this is like, it's so freaking important. Who is the hero in the story? Like if you're thinking about your business, your organization, who is the hero in this story? And this is where most people make the mistake, and most businesses make the mistake. The hero is not you. It's not about your business. It's not about yourself. It's about the person that you're trying to change, because you want to enter into their story. That's like the biggest thing. It's not just like a little bit more about me. And the other day I did this podcast interview, and I was like, I said that nobody wants to join your stupid corporate story. It's not about telling them how long you've been in this country or serving this community and how big your offices are and how many people you have employed, and nobody cares. And the other day there was like, I was looking for a package. Somebody sent a package to me and they didn't arrive. Now I've got my tracking number. Now I'm calling the courier service, and I want to know where my package is, right? So while I'm on the line, they play this message for 2 freaking minutes, and what they tell me is how awesome they are, how long they've been doing this, and how big their company is. And it's like, the only freaking thing that I want is to know where my package is. Because I'm the hero in your story. I don't want to join your stupid career story. I don't really care who you are. All I want is my freaking package, right? So, and it's really about empathy, which is sort of becoming one of the biggest words in business. Or it should be at least one of the biggest words in business, is having empathy with your customer or with the person that you're seeking to change. Having empathy with your hero. So your hero is the person that you're trying to change. That's your hero. And it's very important to try and understand who they are, and then, of course, what they want. Right? So here's from the last kind of decade what the hero wants. The hero wants the Iron Throne, right? So, and it's very important to understand what they want. Because in every single movie, you know what the hero wants. You know what is driving them forward. They want to win the battle. They want to get the girl. They want to become famous. They want this. They want that. So what does your hero actually want? Which is, remember, not you. So what people want is not always that simple. There was a professor of marketing at, I think it was at Harvard, if I remember correctly. And he famously said this. He said that nobody wants a 1/4 inch drill. Have you ever heard this little saying? Nobody wants a 1/4 inch drill. Nobody walks into a hardware store saying, I want a 1/4 inch drill. What they want is a 1/4 inch hole. So people want the hole in the wall. And then Seth Godin actually went a bit further. He said, well, nobody actually wants a hole in their wall either. I don't want a hole in my wall. I want to put a little plug in there, and I want to put a screw in there because that's what I want. But that's also not actually what I want. What I want is I want to hang one of my paintings there. You can see the paintings behind me, right? I want to hang one of my paintings there. That's what I want. But that's not actually what I want. What I want is I want the way that painting behind me makes me feel. I want people to know when they come and visit how expensive that painting was. and I want to feel really important. Or maybe I want to feel that people think I'm very arty and clever. So what I want is not always that simple. And that's really important then to figure out what people really, actually, truly want. So people want, at the very base of it, to feel safe and secure. Because if I feel sort of important because there's paintings on my wall, that makes me feel socially safe and secure. Or everything always boils down to those two things. People want to feel safe and secure, right? So that's our first two steps in the map. We have a hero and we have what they want. And then we have our villain. This was, according to me, the best villain in the entire world. And this is the question: what is standing in the way of your character? What do they need to overcome to get it? It's like, I want this. I want to feel safe and secure, but I can't get there. This is now my problem. The one that I need to change. It's like, I want this, but I can't get past it. So I need to get past this villain. So who is your hero fighting against? And it's very important to tell them that. To say that, but not too much. Because if you frighten your hero too much, then they run away, right? So you want to tell them, but not too much. Like, this is your hero. This is what's standing in your way. And this is how you are going to get past it. And that's where our next step comes in. We have our Gandalf visiting us again. The sage, the guide that helps the hero, right? If you I don't know about everybody over in the States, but over here we read Asterix and Obelix, and you are not Asterix or Obelix in the story. You are Getafix. Getafix is the druid that gives the crazy magic potion, right? You are Gandalf, the one that helps. If you look at this little picture as well, Star Wars reference again, you are Yoda. Like, I wonder if I can do this. You are Yoda. You are over there, right? This is not you. You are not Luke with nice, sexy arms like that. You are Yoda. That's really important to remember. So, and in this frame, I like using this one as well. You are not Angie. You are Nigel over there. This is you. You are the one giving the shoes to your hero. Like, that's really important. It's super important to remember. That's the role that you play. You give them what they need to move forward. And the last bit of the story is, or our last stage on our map, is the victory, right? This is from Slumdog Millionaire, like right at the end of the movie. So the last bit of our story is the victory. And the victory is really important because that's sort of how you write a story. You sort of begin with the end in mind. You want to show people what it will be like when they have used the thing that you, as Nigel or as Gandalf, gave them to overcome the villain. You want to show them like the end of the story. And so there are 3 ways that stories end. Only 3 ways. All stories end in one of these 3 ways. The hero at the end is either united with something or somebody, affirmed, or transformed, right? So united is like a classic one. It's the girl gets boy one, boy gets girl one. It's going back to the family. It's like that idea. So that restoration. The second one is affirmed. It's those stories where the character starts out being really cool and unsure of himself, and then by the end of the story, it's normally like this father figure or this archetypal father that goes, "You always had it in you. You always had it in you. I knew it. I knew it was there. Or I can see now that it was always in you." It's the end of the Wizard of Oz, where she says that, you've always had the power with you. You always had the power to go home. It's always been with you, right? It's also every freaking Oprah episode you've ever seen in your life. You've always had the power, right? And the last one is transformed. So if I were to place Palestra as an idea within this would be the ending of our story. Like, that's the change that I seek to make, or in the promise that we seek to make in this community, is say that when you join this community, you'll be transformed. So here you get, little Bilbo that goes from, in the first movie, really timid and kind of geeky and weird, to the end, at the last movie, being like this freaking warrior. And that's a promise, right? So you need to tell your hero what's going to happen. Like, show them. You're going to be united. You're going to be affirmed, or you're going to be transformed. And so, This is our map, just to recap again. We have our hero, and she wants something, right? But there's someone or something standing in her way. But luckily, there's a wise old mentor or sage that will help them on their journey so that they can get to the victory in the end. And remember the 3 questions. If you only remember these 3 questions out of the session, then that's more than worth your while, right? What does the hero want? What is in their way? And what will happen if they get it or do not get it? And that's it. So I want to ask you to take a moment, if you have a notebook there or something, or someone close to you, or you can just type it. Let's do that. You can type it in the comments. What is your one big takeaway, right? The one big thing that you'll take away from this. You go, this really made sense to me. Like, I'm going to start using this in my business or in my life. What is that for you? Be the wise sage, not the hero. Yeah, there you go. There you go. Sorry, Nalfrey. I almost just, everyone. Keep telling stories. Nalfrey said, I am not the hero. Keep telling stories. For me, obviously for me, always when I do this talk, I realize something again. And for me, it's like emotive. That's the one word that I'm taking away from this. The emotion is really important. That emotion is something that I need to tap into more. So that's really great. So I'm going to just open it up for questions. If anybody has a question or a comment or something that they want to pop up and ask, this is the time to do it. Maybe just get that. Shane read, empathize. That's a really good one. Just before we open it up for questions, for all the people that are visiting us, this is Palestra. If you want to join Palestra, they'd be really, really rad. We have a lot of fun and we do crazy stuff like this once a month. And you can go over to palestra.co.za, or you can just ask the person that invited you to this crazy thing to tell you where it is and how to join, and it'd be really rad to have you. And for everybody watching this later on YouTube and over on Quicket's feed, then obviously the same for you as well. So thank you for that. Let me stop my sharing, and then we can open it up for questions and comments. Anybody have a question or comment that they want to just add or do something cool? Awesome. I'm going to stop our